We're live if you like. Or you can take a moment if you like. Let me get scooted up in here. Get nice and close, I guess, for the
good.
times we're in. It's still kind of weird.
Yeah.
I do feel kind of weird as well. Just like inviting people over. I'm like, who's gonna be chill? But
Yeah. I mean,
it's sketchy.
I do.
Oh, you got to cup on the mic a little bit more.
Come up.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. There you go. Now you're cooking.
You were talking about that. I was like, yeah.
yeah. We can back it up a tad bit if we need here. But yeah.
Yeah. I think we're good. I think we're good.
I'm glad you came through though.
Yeah, me too, man. I'm really happy to be here.
This is sick. I think I saw your art not before I met you, but before I knew it was you.
Oh, word. Yeah.
So from you coming down from the bricks just to grab coffee.
Yeah.
And then I think one day I was just like, oh shit, that's the same dude.
Yeah. I've heard that a couple of times. That's pretty cool.
Is it because you're like low about your art there or?
Well, not necessarily. It's just that I had gotten a lot of exposure, but it wasn't necessarily local exposure. It was kind of I had experienced kind of a viral experience online with my videos about my art, and so people saw it all over the world, but it wasn't necessarily like a local based thing. Local people saw it,
right?
But they didn't know. But so they didn't know I was local essentially.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was I experienced that, and even to a greater extent, I got more reaction and more traction in every market except for North America. So Europe, all over Europe. All over Asia, Russia, huge Central and South American following, and there is a North American element to it. But at one point, at least, it was like the minority of my exposure demographic, if you will.
So I don't know your story though, like at all. I know the cans. I know you.
Yeah.
But like how did all it begin? Like how? So let's put it this way as well. You were speaking earlier about about this piece,
right?
And the piece and the concept in general,
right? Like the themes of the work.
And you sound really articulate. Were you like art school?
Well, no,
I'm
actually
studier?
Self-taught.
Okay,
I'm self-taught, but it's been a lifelong practice, so it's something I've done since childhood.
Gotcha.
And I've had a fairly diverse experience in art. So I've done different styles of art. So I grew up drawing and painting. I was fascinated by animation, which at that time, because I'm a little bit older, I know older than your age group. So like traditional frame animation, because it was also something accessible. You could draw it in a flip book, or you could draw it with sheets and a light table. And so it was something I did in drawing cartoons and animation. Anime or Japanimation is what I first heard of it as. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. So drawing, illustration, painting, stuff I grew up doing. Printmaking was actually an interest of mine that led into screen printing, which was kind of that became a corridor to graphic design and computer graphics, which I've done as work, and this is done also. At the time when I discovered this sculpture idea to dent cans and make it sculptural,
right?
At the time that happened, I was actually I considered myself a painter. So beginning in my early 20s, I decided to focus on oil painting, and I had it's kind of a fine art. It was like halfway in between fine art and like the lowbrow movement that was happening kind of at that time.
Okay.
But it was loosely figurative, female figurative, abstract, with a lot of abstraction, and the idea to create can sculptures kind of just came about by accident. It wasn't serious. I wasn't thinking, hey, I'm going to make this into an art, form of art or whatever, and obsess about it for 15 years. It was just a fun idea.
Time, dude.
Right. It was a fun idea at first. So to put it in reference, or in context, that was 2004 was the first time that I dented a can and thought of it as a creative exercise.
Gotcha.
And that's pretty much what it was. It was on a road trip. I drank a Red Bull. I was bored, and I kind of fiddled with the can, dented it, crunched it a little bit, and then just kind of made a few observations. And they're observations that I'm maybe keen to make because of my background. Like, I love geometry and art in general. So I'll, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Right.
But there was a little spark of an idea, and it started just as that. It was just a little spark, and it grew. Basically, when that happened, I thought, when you have a Red Bull tomorrow, it was kind of my thing. Like, I drink coffee now, but at the time, I would drink it fairly regularly. So I tried it again and again, and it turned into something that was fun that I would do. I would take a break during my day to do it, and it was kind of being an ambidextrous exercise. It's kind of a meditation. It kind of using both hands, I think, is a good way to enter like a superficial meditative state, at least. Okay. But it's a good, at least for me. I can't speak to everyone's, but when I do that, or when I paint, or when I practice art, my mind goes into a certain state to where I'm not necessarily thinking about what I'm doing, but I'm thinking about what I'll do next, or it facilitates further ideas. Gotcha. So that's my main takeaway from creating art, is thinking about creating more art, right, in a way. So it becomes like a free flow, like a free flowing thought kind of condition while I'm creating. So, right. So I would do it, and I wasn't really considering it as art necessarily. I was using Red Bull, and Red Bull was somewhat receptive to it, and and promoting it or whatever. But they actually have an art competition that I don't know if they still do it, but it was in 2010. They had this event, and it would go from city to city. It was called Art of Can.
Okay.
So it was an art competition. And the only premise was that the art had to either be made of or refer to the Red Bull can. So it could be it could be a painting of a can. It could be a sculpture made out of cans. It could be whatever you want. It could be people cut them up and made dresses and all kinds of very elaborate and great, amazing sculptures and amazing artwork. But in 2010, it would go from state to state and country to country. But it happened to be in Miami that year. Okay. And so I entered a piece that I had made. I'd made the piece months prior to the event.
And this is when you were starting to think of it as
so this was I was about 6 years into it at this point, where I wasn't really sure. Well, I wasn't necessarily sure what to do. It wasn't a clear picture of how I would carry forward with it. I was still painting, still serious about painting. But it was interesting. It was something I wanted to share with people, and so it was kind of like marketing. I was sharing it with people, talking about sharing it online, to try to see where it was going. I guess to try to get a response and see where it was going. But the story after this, so it goes on further. But so that's where it was at that time. I entered this piece into the competition because at the time it wasn't something I would do constantly. Even it was something I would become obsessed with for a week or two, and then something I wouldn't do for months. So it would come and go.
Gotcha.
But when it was on, it was like intense inspiration, and there was like little things that they kind of kept it going, like little discoveries that just encouraged me to keep doing it. In a way, it was looking back on it. It's kind of interesting to see the way it kind of unfolded, but the inspiration was a big part of it. That's inspiration is a motivating factor for me.
Right.
So I entered the piece in the contest, and it was selected to be in the exhibit. And then I was invited. They notified me that I qualified to be in the top 3 apparently. So they invited me to Miami for the event. It was a really cool event. It was on South Beach. They actually built a pop-up gallery space on the beach.
It's crazy how much money they throw out at everything.
Yeah,
Just
it was crazy.
They go
and at that time period, they were really into doing. They were very active at that time period. So it was an amazing event. I got to bring a friend of mine with me who grew up in Miami, and to go to this party and to this event, and so it was a lot of fun. A friend of mine at the time was actually had a music, art and culture magazine, and so he actually went to cover it, to do media coverage of it and stuff. So it was a pretty cool, it was fun.
Right.
And so we go there, and the event and stuff. And I actually got a little bit sidetracked at the event, and may have had a few too many drinks. So I wasn't exactly paying attention. But at one point, my friend's wife had noticed that she called me to the front, and they were announcing the winners, and I wasn't really paying attention, but my wife is like, "Hey, they just called the first and second, or they called the third and second place, but they didn't say your name. So I think you went." So they called my name, and I was just kind of like, "Whoa, like what?" And I went on stage, and it was like, it was really, I couldn't believe it. I was like, that's kind of, I was kind of a little bit shocked, but happy at the same time. But I wasn't immediately aware of what's happening or what was happening. So it was a little bit, I was a little put off. I don't know, kind of,
like
it happened a little bit strange,
situation?
Yeah. And
in fact, let me touch your mic just a tad bit real quick because it got a little buzz. Should be good now.
Yeah,
but don't move.
So anyway, I don't want to talk too much about it, but it won the first place, and the prize for winning the competition was a trip to Art Basel in Switzerland, in Basel, Switzerland, which is where Art Basel originated, and it has it happens during the summer months in Basel, Switzerland, and then the winter months it happens in Miami, Florida. Right. That's the Art Basel that we have here.
So I've seen the one, or I went to the one in Miami.
Yeah, Miami.
Not into any of the galleries, but the area.
The ancillary effect. Yeah, the ancillary exhibits are
Winwood
really
walls
cool.
and all that.
Yeah. Winwood is amazing. I've been several times, but so that was fun to go to visit Basel and all that. But there was like I had mentioned, it was something that I was doing and sharing online and talking about. But one particular response that I got, I posted it on Reddit. I don't know if you go on Reddit at all, if you're familiar with Reddit.
Yeah, I do from time to time.
User-generated website.
Yeah. You can give it some more if you need to.
So I posted it on Reddit, and I got the criticism. Well, it was basically a comment. It was a comment that I posted pictures of Red Bull cans that were sculpted, and somebody commented like, "Nice try, Red Bull marketing team," or like, "Oh, you work for Red Bull," or "Oh, this." And I really didn't. We didn't have any type of arrangement. And I was like, I kind of wish I did. That would be nice, because I was trying to make something out of it, or to try to grow it into something, but that actually wasn't the case. And so there was this association with the brand that was problematic, essentially, especially if it's fine art. Like, that's not really a crossover necessarily. That, you know what I mean? It doesn't really match. It was more this commercial type of,
right.
Because the Red Bull image is this extreme kind of, it just wasn't. There was something missing, and it was the association with the brand, obviously. And so at this point, I'd been denting cans for maybe 6 to 8 years, about 8 years, and I had the thought that maybe I should try denting a can that was blank, and then that would be cool. And looking back, I'm kind of like, I can't believe it took me so long just to think of this idea, right? And that's why I could see the look on your face.
Yeah.
So you're like, yeah,
it makes sense if you want to, to elevate it.
Right.
Do a little.
So I did it. So I did a test just real quick. I sanded a can, sanded away the label.
In the same process you do now, or?
And that's the same process I do now. So it begins as an ordinary can that's an ordinary product in a store that's bought, and then so it's scratched. And that was the other kind of development, was using the scratch, which, like the dent, is a flaw.
Right.
It's something that's considered a flaw. If a car is scratched, or this, it's an imperfection.
Yeah.
The dent in the car, the scratch, they're both these similar things. They both have this similar nature. And so using both of them to create beauty instead of something that's flawed or damaged. You know, it just went right along with the concept.
Right.
And it was an instantaneous turning point. It was like when I sanded it real quick and I dented it, and it was like there's a light almost shone from within it. You know, it was almost like in the background. It was almost like that. I might be kind of sensationalizing it a bit,
Right.
but
It's what it feels, though.
but it was it was a major, it was the turning point that and at that point I decided to convert my studio to a sculpture studio and I stopped painting,
Gotcha.
which was also a strange experience because painting was something I was very passionate about.
So do you still paint from time to time now?
No.
You're just out of it? It's like
I mean,
it's all in?
I have, but nothing on. I have technically, but it's nothing on the level of what I was doing.
Right.
So I wouldn't even consider it the same.
Right.
I do a lot of environmental graphics as work. I work so murals and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
Is something I've been involved in. So painting in that regard, but I don't consider it the same thing as having a fine art painting practice.
Right.
And that was a strange process to go through as an artist, to have something that this thing that was so important, and for it to just for its importance to just disappear,
Just all the way. That's
just totally gone.
That's kind of
Yeah.
wild. I'm in my mind now. I'm like, if I just like was
it's
like,
hard to imagine.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's
no more podcasts. I'm done. Like I can't.
and it's hard to imagine, but it could be good to imagine because you have to imagine something that is something that you love that much more.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Because that would be the reason why you never did a podcast again. You know? So, but it is.
That's interesting to think about.
It is an interesting abstract thought. Yeah. I even before I'd likened it, you know, I don't have children, but it's like, you know, like, could you imagine not loving your children? You know, it's like, I don't know, painting was maybe this, you know, something that I would consider on that level of something that I loved and was dedicated to, as it would be to, like, you know, a child or something. But maybe not. That could be a stretch. But
it's in
as
the same lane.
As a thought experiment,
It's in the same lane.
It kind of, yeah. So there were some questions I had about how it happened. Like, is that like was that normal? But yeah, I got over it.
You good now?
Yeah, I'm good now. And then, but it started then, you know, with the sanding and the process there. So sanding and polishing the can, and then denting and sculpting it, and like this, and then framing, making this display assembly is also a part of it, and that's also been. They're both something that evolves over time. Something that starts. And even the technique itself, like I said, it's something that started very simple, and then it grew into a more complex, interesting, organized, beautiful thing. And that's one of the themes behind the work is to show a path towards creating, so whether music, humor, art of any kind, you know, like drawing, painting, and performance. It could be any type of art, and even non-traditionally artistic practices can benefit from the process of establishing simple elements and basically compounding them. So if you have simple parts to something that are interchangeable,
right,
then you can then begin to arrange and compose these simple parts that work together. They work together naturally. So finding that it can be helpful, and it's also something that is illustrated with the technique itself, because it's done by hand. It's not forced. You can't make it do whatever you want. You have to discover what it will allow you to do.
Right.
And so that's kind of cooperation by definition. So you're cooperating with the form. And so by implementing simple components and cooperation, that makes any process that you're moving forward with, whether it's writing a beat, writing a screenplay, creating a painting, doing anything, there's a path and a process you can follow that will benefit you and create something more beautiful, as as effective as possible.
Right.
So that's part of the narrative, and it's part of the thing that I like to talk about with art the most, because it's a relatable thing, and the object itself is relatable. It's a very familiar object
absolutely.
and that's part of the dynamic of the work, is that it's this very familiar object, but it's also presented in an unfamiliar way.
Yeah.
The shape, it's something that it's familiar. It has both at the same time. So it's a little bit of a trick, and I don't like to, which isn't something I technically like to embrace, but to say it's a trick is maybe to oversimplify, because it's depending on our perception, like as humans at the core level, by presenting both of these kind of opposing concepts. Our perception is designed a certain way. Everyone's perception is designed a certain way. So I usually point this out by, with the example of like seeing something in the clouds. You see a face, you see a dog, be like, dude, that looks like looks like a raccoon or something. And it's something children do a lot more, because they have maybe more of an unfettered imagination.
Yeah.
But it's not something that you necessarily lose as an adult, but it's a good example of something maybe children are more prone to. Like a child will be like, look, I see something in the clouds, and you're like, dude, I don't see it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But at the same time, you could be like,
that was me. I was like, I don't know what bunny rabbits. I'm like, dude, I don't see that stuff.
You don't see it.
Even then.
So
yeah.
It is something maybe some people are more prone to, but it illustrates how we perceive things. So it's that same concept goes very deep into how we perceive faces. We're designed to perceive faces in a way that our brain just does it by itself. It's something we do kind of subconsciously. But at the same, so we also perceive repetition, pattern, precision. There's these other things that we perceive, and they're usually the things that underpin what we find beautiful. So a beautiful painting can be a very precise exercise of craft, of study that looks photographic.
Right.
So to achieve that level of skill is amazing, and then to be a beautiful painting is also amazing. So patterns are beautiful to us, and there's geometry and math goes deep into all of that. Color combinations. There's all of these. They're like the elements of what creates beauty for us when we see something in its own context, like the pattern on your shirt. Be like, dude, that's a cool shirt.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, that color looks good on you. Or it's the stuff that can make things more interesting too. Like, wow, that car is awesome. And it's like, well, it's just the design of the car.
Right.
The way it works is no different than any other car.
Absolutely.
So its function, its utility is not any different, but it looks cool, or it looks beautiful. And it's something that, and to tie it back to the art, that kind of thing is something that we're always exposed to, and there can be an effect when we're constantly exposed to something. We can start to accept it and even to ignore it slightly. It becomes background noise or something that we always. It's just always there.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't necessarily just get the attention that it deserves, or its importance isn't always maybe taken for granted is a good way to say it. And it's the same. The can is one of those objects also. It's something we're very familiar with. It comes in every color, shape, size, flavor. They're just everywhere. So we don't. Its importance of how it's mass-produced, the material, none of this is really, it has to be pointed out,
right?
Essentially. So there's a bit of, like, the act of pointing out the importance of art, or pointing out that art is there, or art is everywhere, essentially. It can be found here, it can be found anywhere. You can go off on a tangent and find art anywhere. But that's all part of the story, though, I suppose. It's pointing it out, where it's not always evident.
Right. And people are seeing it though too.
Yeah.
Like you.
Yeah.
I think you have a certain level of skill in that, because it's like there's so much to it. There's so much to it, but like you still might it could have gone either way. with this style. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it could have been, oh, that's kind of cool, and then
Yeah. It could have.
it's like novel and whatnot, but yeah, it could have been.
Yeah, and there are, and that also poses the idea of like, you know, where does this go from here? Although there's part of the discovery process, or it's the discovery process, which is also, so that the creative process is something that I mentioned in like a path to an efficient creative process, or a path to establishing an order of operations, which, well, order of operations is a mathematical term. Compounding simple components is a mathematical process.
Right.
Compounding is a math term. It's, you know, where numbers grow exponentially. So when you have simple elements working together, their beauty or their functionality can grow exponentially as well.
Right.
And to the point to where you lose sight of the simple beginnings. And I guess that's kind of the point, is that's where the path leads, is and that's kind of a test to know if you've achieved this effect with whatever it is, whether you're baking a cake, or you're, you know, trying out a recipe, or you're making a painting, or you're denting a can. It's if at the end of the path, the simple beginnings are no longer evident, which would make someone wonder, how did you do that?
Right.
You know, so it's when you go beyond that simple beginning. It's like, how did you make this croissant so fluffy?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, it starts very simple.
It seems magic.
It starts in a bowl with some water. It's very simple, you know. And it has kind of a magic. Seems magic. So, and so it's kind of a process to get there. It's like, how do you get there? It's a path to a process.
All right.
So
I've seen a few of your videos of your process too.
Yeah.
Of you actually denting.
Yeah. And that's kind of the thing, is like, some people or one response is this, you know, like, this is a very extraordinary claim that you're doing this by hand. So people kind of expect proof,
right.
I suppose.
Yeah.
But so in the process of creating the art, I had to document the art. So in the same with when I made paintings, I had set up, you know, a space to photograph and document my work, so I could reproduce it and to show it people, you know, have it online and stuff. So documenting these, documenting the reflective surface of the can, especially since the can is so varied, you know, is very difficult. If there's something you lose when you see it in person, like say in your studio here, when you see it, you see all the intricate, subtle light reflecting the surfaces, you see your reflection, so it makes sense. But if you take a picture of it, there's definitely something that's lost because you're not in the environment. And when you're in the environment with it, it's, you know, it's not like being there. Looking at a picture like this, it's not necessarily like being there. So I had to create a documentation unit, essentially, which is an environment that would be a standard environment that provides a reflection on the can. And so there's like, basically there's a camera in a box. The sculpture goes in the box, and the walls of the box.
Have you posted that? Have I seen that before? I probably haven't seen the whole.
It's in my studio. It's in my studio. I have one built right now, but I'm building a bigger one. And so when that's built, I'm going to do a story, a little, you know, or a post or some stuff about it. Because doing that, so I had to. So those are all photographic things. So like product photography, like this is all field of photography where people do stuff like this to photograph, you know, technical photography and parts and all this stuff. So that's what I did. So I had to find it's a gradient and color of the inside of the box that provides the best reflection, a reflection that shows the shape, shows the form. So let me just put it, if you put a shiny can in a white box, it almost looks completely flat.
Right.
You don't see any of the dimensions. So there has to be this variance. that occurs for the shape to become, for you to see the shape of the form, or the form of the shape. And then you also have to hide the camera, because the camera will be reflected on the surface of the can.
Right.
So getting that all figured out and set up was a process unto itself. But it's done. So going through all of that kind of led me into making creative video projects with my work, and that's part of what I do and what I share online. It is to film the process of denning itself, but also, so I'll do stop motion animations of the work.
I went back. So I've seen a good bit of it, but I went back today or yesterday and saw the stop motion one.
Yeah, I've done
with the. Did the color go as well, or you shaved?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is what I was thinking as well. I'm like, this man has so much damn patience, because just to do not only to dent the can, but to keep placing it back on your stand.
Yeah.
Like.
So, and that is, I mean, you can imagine what's entailed, and it's done step by step.
Yeah.
And then I'll take other considerations. So I'll make a dent or a slight modification, then put it on the stand, but I might rotate the thing 1 degree for every photograph, so it's spinning as it's being formed as well. So I try to get not too complicated, because I'm trying also, the stop motion is a very simple process. It's just photographs in series.
Right.
So I try to use the same approach to it as I would to my art, and just make it something as simple as possible. So it's not edited afterwards or anything. But trying to think it out as well as possible ahead of time is really
Gotcha.
And that's also so the goal I was trying to achieve with building this environment to photograph and take videos of the sculptures. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought for a second there. But yeah, so the goal was to create a photograph that is exactly what I was trying to capture. So it's not edited or anything. So I'm capturing with the camera settings. So I have my f-stop, my exposure, everything is set. Right. My lighting, the box is lit from within, so the lighting is the same every time. And so the picture I take is the picture that I want. So there's no post or anything. So I tried to set it up to be as good as it could.
Digital though, right?
It's digital.
Okay, yeah. Digital camera, but you post. You don't like the post editing.
Not the post. It's cropped.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So there's not really any. So I capture the picture and I figured if I can achieve that, then I kind of know that I'm doing it right. I thought, and it's gone well. I'm actually, like I said, I'm redesigning that. Itself. So I also designed and built a rotating platform, so I can take video of the can rotating, so you get a 360 view of it. Then it also fits the piece in its display assembly, and that spins, so you see it from all angles. Because there's this obsession behind creating the art and this attention to detail, and so that goes beyond that goes into documenting the work as well. So I try to meticulously document. So just so that it can be viewed, essentially. That's so that it can be shown as effectively as possible. Because they're expensive also. If someone is buying it without ever seeing it in person, then I want to convey it as effectively as possible to them. You
do a great job. I do recall seeing one. I'm sure you get tons of them, but one comment on a lot of people like to talk shit, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's part of it, I guess.
Yeah. Someone complaining about I guess one around 6,000 or so.
Oh, about the price?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think right now the highest priced one right now is I think 3,200. But yeah, a lot of people I've gotten some people get upset about it.
Yeah.
How can you charge that much for it? And although there's long been this thing between art and value, and the value of art and that, its collectability, and kind of the controversy, and it's something I thought was super interesting when I was a kid as well. Is people with Picasso, oh, my my child could make that painting.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
it's millions of dollars. I always thought that was an interesting controversy, but just the whole idea of assigning value to art. There's parallels between how we assign value to a piece of paper that we call money. You know, in a way, it's obviously not. It's apples and oranges, but it's
literally about the same. Yeah, there's huge parallels. It's all. I mean, it's a value.
Yeah, because I'm not. Literally, like I always thought that was interesting, and that is one of the themes because it's supposed to be that, you know, like this dented can costs thousands of dollars. Yeah, like I get it. That achieves that. That statement is controversial, but the whole story is, you know, I spent 15 years developing this. That one sculpture itself, before achieving it successfully, I tried that sculpture 8 times.
Yeah.
Over the course of 2 years.
Yeah.
It took 20 hours to create. It took 20 hours to sculpt. You know, it took 4 hours to meticulously polish. After it was created, it was, you know, it took, you know, an 8-hour day to document it, to do all, you know, there's a lot of,
there's more to it, dude.
There's more to it. Exactly.
Like I like your price.
I could go on.
I like your price. Up it up.
Well, that's the other thing is that over time it has grown.
Right.
But also my attention to the detail has grown. But it is something that's supposed to grow in value. And I've never been a money person. Like, and I'm not like borderline autistic or anything like that. Not that I've never been tested, but but I'm not money minded. To put it this way, if like the way that I understand money and value is directly connected to art. So, it's kind of my frame of reference for it, but something like, even as a child, is something I never really caught on to. Like
right.
a car was thousands of dollars, and that just seemed like this astronomical amount of money to me. So, and that's something I've never, like, I'm not the best at assigning value to money itself. And like, it's a little bit abstract to me, I would say. Like, I'm not, and I've learned that over time. I'm not necessarily bad with money, but it's not, I don't think that way in the way that a lot of people do. I guess,
gotcha.
And there may be
is important. There's not much importance in it, or not a huge.
Well, no, it's not. Well, it's not a motivation for me. And
gotcha.
So I think I'm very fortunate to make money making art, because I have to make art. And like, the thing is, I would have to do this whether it was a success or not.
Right.
You know, if nobody was buying my art, I would still be making it, and I would be working somewhere and doing it in my spare time. So it's not, I don't do it for the money, which you might get the impression that might be the impression if someone didn't know me, that these high price sculptures, yeah. It's like this thing that whole narrative maybe it might have that vibe. But part the direction that story is going is, with the value building over time, is to create priceless art. For them to become priceless, which is that, I mean, it's ironic that things get more and more expensive. You know, like these, not like archaeological relics or something, like these most valuable things that you can consider, like, you know, ancient paintings or art, that are priceless, because they go beyond value to the fact where there's no longer a price.
Right.
It's like that kind of shines light on, like you're saying, how we assign money or assign value to a piece of paper.
Yeah.
It's like this whole idea. It's a very human idea, and it can contradict itself in that way. If something, to literally say priceless, which means, do you mean zero, or do you mean so much money it's not a price? Like, I know that's not a thing. There's billionaires. That's a ridiculous amount of money. I mean, there can't be something that costs more than that. We're talking like,
they can't get it.
Buy the world.
Yeah.
You know, buy every country in the world, have enough money to do it. I don't know. It starts to become just this. It starts to become an abstract thing.
Yeah.
In a way, because people are also, when you start talking about numbers like that, like, we can all imagine what 100 of something is. We all are familiar with $100 and like what we can buy with $100 or $1,000. or $10,000, or like, you can spend, easily $500,000 to buy a house.
Right.
It's something that people buy all the time.
Yeah.
And that's, but going beyond that is something. So like $1 million, that's a lot. But $1 billion,
yeah,
like I don't think people really have a frame of reference for what's different about $1 million and $1 billion.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah.
Have you? There's an app or a web app called Spend Bill Gates Money, I believe it's called.
Yeah, and like what you could do with
what you can do with it.
Yeah,
and it starts with ice cream cones and starts with through $3 this, $3 that, and then it goes to aircraft carriers and you're sitting there hitting the button. Each time you hit the button, it's one purchase of that item. So, and they even put it in like football teams, and stuff like that. And you're sitting here tapping for like even the highest thing for Bill Gates money. I'll send it to you or show it to you.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
It's tremendous.
Yeah,
but like then it starts to set in. You're like, oh wow, that's different. That's different than what I got going on here.
Well, I'm not gonna bother to actually Google it, but and I know these numbers they're not exact, but 1 million seconds is like 12 days.
1 million seconds is 12 days.
1 billion seconds is 33 years. Or 30-something years. Do you want me to get...
Yeah, you just framed it again.
You want me to... I can...
Yeah, if you want to pull it up, go for it. I do want to talk as well. Just say something about the cans as well, because I came from your show, or I guess a joint show at Epoch.
Oh, yeah.
And I think I came home and just had like a PBR can chilling in my hand. And you try it. That's what I want to say to all the people as well. That's what I would like to say. It's like,
try it.
Yeah, just try it. Just sit down for 5 minutes and try to put two dents in. Two equal dents. Try it.
That's also why I publish content that shows the process is so people so they can see it and try it. And before I look up the million billion seconds thing, a lot of people do try it and they'll reach out to me and share with me what they've done. And there's people that get it.
Yeah.
And when I had with this international exposure, there was many instances, and it still happens to this day. There's been whole art classes that studied my videos and then had a whole art class try it.
Wow.
And the art teacher actually sent me photos from a couple of the students that did like a really good job.
They're getting it on, they're doing well with it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's pretty cool. And it's something that I have planned in the future. It's something that's in the works right now is to have an actual instructional video series.
Okay.
It would actually, the first one would be just an introduction. It would be a simple introduction, and then it could go. But I will say it's something I plan on doing, and it's something that I really appreciate about the art and about connecting with people because it's something you can try very easily. It's something. It's very accessible.
Very oh shit! I can try this right now.
That right there is a huge I think art should be accessible, and creating art should be accessible, and that's one of the other things about this is it's just a can.
Yeah,
they're everywhere.
Yeah. Did I see there's a sustainability effort? Or not effort, sustainability factor in it as well? Or a thought process in there?
There is. It's something. And it's a narrative that I've developed, although it hasn't been there hasn't been an official platform for it yet, but it is part of the narrative, because it's essentially it's repurposed. This is objects that's been repurposed as art, but it also it questions our treatment, how we treat the objects we use, and so it kind of goes. It's not like a traditional recycling, recycle, reuse. Well, it is reuse, but
right.
It's more generally kind of an examination of how we treat the objects we use, or it points out how important the objects we use are, in hopes that we would treat them differently. So that is there, and to point out how amazing this object is and how it deserves for us to treat it well, whether it's recycling, reusing, and even going into designing for responsible use,
right,
on an industrial level. But yeah, so that is definitely a narrative that's there.
I'm pulling up now.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm curious if there's any cans you hate, any ones that like this can sucks to bend.
There's some designs can be frustrating because they're a design is good, like, or is successful, like I mentioned, because you can't force a design to be created. Like, you have to find what's possible. I'll often be working very close to failure. So I'm like right on the border of collapse, essentially, at a lot of points. And the closer a design is to collapse, the harder it can be to create. So there's been designs that I'll create and they're not quite possible. Like right at the end, there's too much stress or too much pressure, and it fails. And so when a failure occurs, you know it. Like, it's where it'll buckle, it'll bind, and that's what I consider a failure. So that's what I'm trying to avoid, obviously. But it'll be very close. So there's been designs that are like that. So they're very close to being possible, and that's, I discovered that through trial and error. So I try it a bunch of times and I'm like, oh, it's almost possible. So trial and error is something we're all familiar with, but it's repetition.
Right.
And repetition, like I mentioned before, is one of these very important, it's a very important tenet of art itself, with pattern, repetition of shapes, and repetition is a key theme to my work. Repetition is repeated. Like, it goes like these levels deep with repetition. But what you can do with repetition is to add alternation, which is and I compare it to music. So a beat, a repeated thump, just boom, 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 or like that precise repetition. It's almost a beat. You hear that in some, but then if you start to alternate it and go and change the pitch of the beat, or to change the volume of it,
right,
it gives it this inflection, and it starts as that alternation is repeated, it starts to form a pattern, and it starts to become more interesting. So repetition and alternation are part of the discovery process as well as part of the creation process.
Gotcha.
So if a design is almost possible, or if like you're making a painting and it's almost there, or you're writing a song and it's almost there, or like you can tell a joke one way and it won't be funny, but if you say it differently, or change that instead of a priest it was a rabbi, or
right,
if you change it, then all of a sudden, like, oh, that's fun. That's what makes it funny. So,
right,
but it's the same joke.
Yeah,
it's just said differently. It's how things can be lost in translation as well, to go the other way. So I've repeated a design enough to know that it's possible, but it's still not quite there. So then if I add alternation and change some of the variables, so like, so I'll change the number of times that this dent is repeated, or the angle of it, or just the slight arrangement, I'll change one distance here or that, and then try it again. And because of that slight tweak in the arrangement, in the simple components, it will become possible. And so that's happened many times. So it's part of the discovery process. These ideas are applied at every level of the art, and they should be applied at every level of any process any artistic, creative, or thought process, anything. Like, if you're repeating these same themes on different levels of it, then you know that you're creating something effective.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like a checklist. You're like, am I doing this? Like, if I'm doing this, then I know I'm headed in the right direction. If like I've kind of followed these steps, then I know that I'll end up with something I can be happy with. That's my goal. And I guess that's obviously, like, approaching things that way shows kind of an obsession with it,
yeah,
with the whole thing in general. which I admit I am obsessed with.
Yeah. I mean, you said 15 years, right?
Yeah, well, 2004. So it's 16 years.
16
now.
years.
Yeah, 2004 was the first time.
I'd say that's an obsession. I'd say you're pretty deep in there.
Yeah, it's pretty deep. And that's the other thing is and it's something that people are familiar with humor. So a lot of times with humor, a comedian will be pointing out things that are ridiculous. And you're like, wow, I never thought about that before. But yeah, that is ridiculous. You like Seinfeld, like, what's the deal with blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, yeah. And it's funny. It's something you're like, oh, yeah. And we're like, oh, well, what's the deal with denting a can? It can actually be beautiful and make you, and thought-provoking. I mean, that's not a funny thing to say.
Yeah.
But that's but there is kind of by definition, there's a humor in pointing out irony, and pointing out how things that we don't think twice about are ridiculous. And the ridiculous, there's a heavy amount of ridiculous activities that take place when I create art, and about why I create art.
Right.
Like to spend all this time and effort and money denting cans. It's like that's a ridiculous idea. But at the same time, it's kind of a thought process, and it's kind of where it ties into philosophy a bit. There's a philosophy called like the wisdom of the ridiculous, and about how
Heard that one yet?
It's Alan Watts.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with, but he's
I know
British, but he's known for westernizing a lot of the Eastern philosophical ideas. I think he may have passed away in the 70s, but I know he was popular in the 1970s, but wrote several books, a lot of talks and lectures and stuff. But it's kind of like a westernized Eastern philosophy is how I would describe it. Where to say like a lot of our customs are ridiculous. A lot of the things we do in our culture are ridiculous, and that's kind of pointed out if you observe a foreign culture.
Yeah,
you're like, wow, they dress funny, they talk funny. It's like, and to say funny, but it's unusual, it's unfamiliar,
right?
And it can seem alien, like you can't understand what they're saying, and it can seem you're like, well, this seems ridiculous because you're unfamiliar with it, but they have that same view of you.
Oh, absolutely.
But most people don't walk around all day and consider how ridiculous what they're doing are. It's a lot of these ideas, if applied in a strict manner, would be you wouldn't be able to live a normal life, because you wouldn't be able to. It's like you'd be captivated by the beauty of the reflection of the light in the carpet before you wouldn't be able to get out of your room, because you'd be like everything would be so interesting, or it's
like a baby or something. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's to say, as childhood, when everything is new and unfamiliar, that's when everything seems the most interesting or exciting, and it's human nature to become desensitized to things. In a lot of ways, humor, art, music, it kind of refreshes our perspective on the things that we become accustomed to, and it's something it's kind of oh yeah, that's right. It's kind of it's something that happens, and it's something important. We all need that reminder. I think it's good to have it as often as possible, and it's something that's different from person to person. Like I said, not everyone thinks that way, but a lot of people do. There's a fun exercise that I've always thought was interesting. Like if you repeat the same word over and over, you just pick a random word.
Oh, yeah.
And repeat it over and over again. By the 20th or 30th time you've said it, the meaning goes away, and you're just making a sound.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's like the meaning is disassociated from the sound of it. And it's like listening to a foreign language. And you think, well, yeah, every word is made up. Every word we use is made up. And we're just agreeing on them.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a thought exercise to do that, to disassociate. And like there's actually a comic strip that I've seen online recently. I think it's been around for a little while, maybe a year or so, but it's the Aliens. and they'll just describe normal human stuff, but the way they describe it,
they're kind of in a pastel. But the color scheme's kind of pastel. I've seen that one.
Simple alien drawings, and like they'll have a cat, and like it's this very dry explanation of like of a cat.
Yeah,
like
the purr box something or other.
Yeah,
I think.
But and so it's that alien perspective, and that's also there is an Alan Watts talk about that. It's a thought exercise of like if you were to imagine that an alien from another world that was new or a baby, if you could communicate with a baby,
right,
or a child, and it's like a lot of children are known for like, why this? Why everything? You're like, oh, because we have to go to the store. Well, why do we have to go to the store? Oh, because we need milk. Well, why do we need milk?
Yeah.
We're like, oh, well, because you need protein. You need to eat and eat protein. Well, why do you need that? Because your cells need to break it down to create, store fat and blah blah blah. And so you could go on and explain. If you answered every question, you wouldn't leave the house because you'd be explaining everything from nutrition to like how does a car work? I'm like, oh, this is going to take a while.
Yeah.
So, but kind of props to us because when you think of that alien perspective, these are all things that our brains internalize, categorize, learn. Like they're all things we wake up every day. We're like, all right, I know what a car is.
Yeah.
I know what this is. I know what this person is saying.
Yeah.
It's like we've programmed ourselves to operate that way. And you know what? Within all of those things, like how do you learn?
Yeah.
How do you learn to talk? You repeat, you refine. So repetition, refinement, like there's all of these important things are within learning, adapting, growing. So they're kind of universal ideas. And I mean, in my opinion, like if you're implementing universal ideas in what you're doing, then it's kind of it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Rather than like relying on superficial, on something superficial or something, which you could question if that's even if something can be superficial because.
Oh, now we're going. We're going deep.
Yeah, you could just like bring in your alien friend and try to explain to him what superficial means. It's like it's just that in itself is just a construct. You could have. It goes and I do like talking about the philosophical aspect of art in general, but especially as how it relates to my process and how it's expressed through it.
I just want to go with your philosophy. Were you doing a lot of reading or just sitting and thinking type of cat?
It's more sitting and thinking.
Yeah.
I don't. It's been a while since I've read a book. I'm maybe more of a thinker, but I do read. But actually, I guess I read online a little bit more. But okay. I'll read articles. I read scientific papers. I'll read about stuff I don't know about. I'm really interested in chemistry and things that I can relate to thought wise, even if I'm not like technically proficient or knowledgeable.
Right.
But yeah, I do like to think philosophically, and that was this will be the last time I mention Alan Watts. But when I first encountered his work, they were ideas that I had, or that I'd had like glimpses of these ideas, but they were so well explained that although maybe an idea I might have had like a spark of an idea or a thought like this,
right.
It being explained like that really. I was interested. I was attracted to it, but it also helped develop the core idea that I had originally, and so it was easy to connect with. But I had the same experience when I studied geometry in for the first time in high school. I was like, this makes sense to me. I've thought that before. I'm like, wow, like a triangle. Or like, or this makes sense. Like, if you know that this line is that long, then if you double it, then if it's a 2-inch line, if you double it, it's 4 inches.
Right.
That's a geometric proof. And you can use that to measure something. So if you know something, or if you see 2 points and you can kind of imagine where the halfway point is, you could then measure and verify. So you could find the center of something, and then if you know where the center of something is, like it's a building. So you use geometric proofs. If you know one thing, then you can prove these other things.
Right.
And if you know those other things, then you can prove these other things. If you know that the radius of a circle is X, or if you know that if one side of a triangle is A, then you know that A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So you can find the angle, all the other angles of the triangle. You can find the other leg distances. By knowing one thing about something, you can use that information to discover more things about that thing.
So you were stoked on geometry?
On geometry,
like in high school, though?
Oh, yeah.
That's dope.
And I hated algebra. Algebra was like getting punched in the brain. I was just like, no. Just not, I just didn't want to.
You think maybe some of it's like the visual element then?
I think it could be. I think I lean. I think I lean that way. It was more in line with the way that I think.
Right.
And I don't necessarily subscribe to like the right brain, left brain ideas, which I don't know if you've heard about. They say like left-handed people are right-brained and right-handed people are left-brained, and there's a difference between left-handed people are more artistic and right-brained people. Like that whole thing. There may be some truth to it. Like if you could find truth in astrology, you could find some truth in the right brain, left brain. But I'm actually fairly ambidextrous. I use both hands I'll actually practice ambidextrous. Like my sculpture technique relies heavily on using both hands simultaneously.
Gotcha.
A lot of music. If you're playing guitar, you're doing one thing with one hand, and you're doing something with your other hand. Same with the drums, the same with, and people will do it. Like they might have a dominant hand or something, but I think that's also a good exercise. But so if you use both hands, then technically you're using both sides of your brain. But I think people are. It just depends on how you started thinking when you started thinking when you were a kid. You're like, oh, I started thinking this way. I'm like, oh, I started thinking this other way. You're still getting into the same place. Geometry and algebra describe the same stuff,
right?
2 different ways. So it's like 2 different languages. Like, I don't speak your language. You don't speak mine, but we can both say the same thing.
Yeah.
And luckily,
it's universal. Yeah.
Yeah, and luckily we could still communicate. I might understand what you're saying, but we have a translator, or you could use hand motions and point or draw a picture and to describe what you're saying.
Right.
So
it's gonna get there somehow. Yeah.
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 I mean, with technology now, you can talk into your phone and
I'm into that.
It'll talk it out in another language.
I'm a big fan.
It's super cool. Yeah, it's super cool. Well, like I have friends who speak Mandarin, Chinese, and they can speak it, but they can't write it.
Okay.
So and likewise, you may be able to speak a different language but not write it, or maybe not read it as well as you can speak it. So there's different degrees of it, I guess.
Makes sense to me.
But yeah, I've done a lot of international travel and relied on other countries having better education systems than America, and also relying on Google Translate.
Right.
Yeah.
Where are you originally from here?
Yeah, I grew up in the Clearwater area.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was born in Detroit.
Okay.
But moved to Florida when I was like 1.
Okay.
So I grew up here.
Gotcha. Your folks from Detroit then? Or
yeah, actually
up north somewhere? I hear how you speak a little bit. I'm like,
my mom
around here?
my mom's family was in Michigan for 1 generation. My dad is actually an immigrant. He immigrated in the 50s from Sardinia, which is Italy.
Okay.
It's one of the islands.
Shit, am I?
It's one of the islands. There's Sicily is the bigger island, and then Sardinia is the smaller island. So not the mainland.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so him and one brother and his parents, and he had also had other cousins and stuff had moved here as well. So yeah, so so he was an Italian immigrant, and was learned to speak English and all that kind of stuff, like like you would, and became an American. Married my mom. She was American. I believe both of her parents may have been first generation. But yeah, so my grandmother on my mother's side was Welsh, and my grandfather on my mother's side was Irish, and then my father's side was Sardinian.
Gotcha.
For many generations. Huh. So kind of
you got a nice blend going.
Yeah,
Man.
a little blend. I have three brothers, and we all came out pretty much the same. We all look pretty similar, but just varying degrees of that mixture.
Okay,
I suppose.
It's a little like Powerpuff Girls type situation.
Yeah, but and also with I think speaking of heredity, my dad is a mathematician. So he was actually an engineer, but it was pretty much like a mathematical genius, and so I think I did take some math, like tendency towards math. I think I took some of that from him, and then on my mother's side, my grandmother was a very talented artist, not a fine artist, but it was more on the craft side. But she was very talented, art wise. There was some art on my father's side as well, but more music. My father and one of my brothers are both musicians, very talented musicians as well.
So do you play as well?
For fun.
For fun.
Yeah, okay. Just for fun.
I know the vibes. I thought it was in here, but I got a bass out there.
Yeah, I saw.
I used to try to play on the regular.
Yeah.
But
it's
not that good.
Yeah.
The ambidextrous thing is not.
Yeah.
I'm not. It's not that great.
Hey.
I gotta think a lot. But I can ear play with most stuff. If I hear a song, I'm like, I can. Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah. So yeah, I think what I do now is kind of just this. It is a combination of math and art in a way. Like there's a lot of math.
It's definitely apparent.
Although it's like it's math that's just kind of pulled from existence. There's not much that's calculated or pre-planned, because like I said, if this were approached in a technical mathematical way, like by analyzing the surfaces and the tensile strength of the metal, and like using all these very complex mathematical equations, that there's a school of math called topology that deals with it's used in building networks and network
like computer networks, or
like network nodes of computer networks, but it's the area of math that's used to describe three-dimensional shapes. So it describes some of this, like the torus. It gets a really high math that uses geometry and algebra, uses all the other calculus, it uses all these other studies together. It's very, I only know what it's called. I know a couple of the things about it. I don't study it in any degree. But so to approach that in that way would be extremely, like you'd need a supercomputer, you'd need like a team of mathematicians, like and engineers to pre-plan it.
Right.
Because you would need a computer model and all of this information to do it pre-planned.
Has any one of those people like analyzed your stuff?
I have spoken with a lot of math. Actually, the last interview I did was a Zoom interview with. He's a mathematician and a math professor. He studies origami as well.
Okay.
And origami has a strong correlation to math. And there's also parallels between what I do and origami. Like even like origami has some of the same tenets. So like a sheet of paper, like what wants to happen to a sheet of paper? It wants to get a fold in it. It wants to crumple. It wants to fold. Just like a can wants to be dented. It's kind of a very simple thing. It's the thing that wants to happen. And so then when you organize and orchestrate the folds and work within the constraints of what the paper will allow you to do, you can create these beautiful shapes. There's geometry within it, and and it's also a very diverse. I mean, I consider it an art form,
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
but it's I do a lot of my audience are origami, and the last interview I did was with an origami group.
I think I did see that.
So there is a lot of a crossover, and there are some really amazing origami artists, but it ties into math, into engineering. Ideas from origami are used in medical devices.
Wait, one more time. Objects from origami are used in medical devices?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The principles of it, or
actual shape wise. So there's I don't know if you know what a stent is.
Okay.
But it's a device that they insert into an artery, and it expands to expand the artery that has collapsed. So there's actually an origami folded. It's a cylinder, but it's made by folding a sheet. When it's folded, it's able to be inserted, and then when it unfolds, it expands and opens up a collapsed artery. So yeah, and that's
origami. Mm-hmm. That's sick.
Now, and just to mention it, the difference between origami and what I do by denting the can is the difference between the 2 dimensions, 2 and 3 dimensional.
Gotcha.
So a sheet is 2-dimensional, and so you're starting with 2 dimension. Then when you start to fold it, you start to create it. You're working into that 3rd dimension, but denting the can, you're beginning in the 3rd dimension. And there's a lot of origami that once folded will create a cylindrical type of form, where there's only one step in between a cylinder and a sheet, and that's to connect 2 of the parallel edges.
Yeah.
So you can create a cylinder from a sheet. So it's just that one step away. So it's one step away in dimension, and you can kind of imagine what a fold is like compared to a dent.
It's about It seems like it has a little bit more skill to me.
It is, and
or it's almost athletic, or almost
there is. So, pardon me. There is a physical limitation to it, and I've with the practice and stuff. Because I use my thumbs and like basically the tips of my thumbs and my thumbnail, and so they've become conditioned to do that. There'll become points like just to take a can and to dent it. Right, the first dent is pretty easy to make.
Right,
but by the time a design is towards the middle or the end, or it can require a lot of force, which can cause pain, which can be a physical limitation. But and I guess you don't really. I mean, you wouldn't really get that with folding paper. But
have you tried your hand at
just some simple origami? Some simple origami, and I've done, like I mentioned, so I can't think of a design and draw it out and then make it by denting it. But I'll go in the reverse order. So I'll make a design, I'll dent it, and then I'll make a diagram or a pattern from that. So I'll go from the 3-dimensional and then take it into the 2-dimensional, where it can become a repeating pattern, or so it has that representation in both dimensions. And I kind of forgot why I was making that point, but it does work in reverse order though.
It's insanity though. I know that much. This is wild.
Thanks, man.
Especially like, I don't know. I see just for instance there, just on that ridge there, as it approaches the ridge, before it comes over, it seems like there's another tiny bit of another lip right before it gets there. It's like, I don't know. I don't think I could do this. That's time.
Yeah.
That's some time right there, dude.
It is.
I don't think I have enough patience for that one.
It is. It takes, that's the thing. It does take a lot of time, a lot of practice and whatnot. But the thing is, I've already done it.
Yeah.
The other thing is it has, through that practice, it's something that's become maybe not easy, but it's something that I've become very familiar with.
Right.
Something I could actually do, like I could kind of do it with my eyes closed.
Have you ever played around like that?
Not with my eyes closed. I do.
Or like maybe watch some TV?
I do this one exercise though. So there's a difference between like practicing and exercising. When I make a sculpture, I'm very deliberate and cautious and careful. But if I'm just practicing or just messing around, I can work more freely and faster. I can work faster.
Gotcha.
So what I did, and I also this can here, this is like a standard size that I use for this format. But I can use a smaller can, and it doesn't have to be sanded. So I get like a LaCroix, and I'll drink it, and then I can use that. I can just practice with that. It doesn't have to be any particular size or anything. So as this, I keep kicking the camera. Sorry, guys.
Is that the Oh, okay.
I keep kicking the camera stand. Sorry about that. So I'll practice. So I'll have and there's one design in particular that I did this with. And what I did was I streamlined the process. So I determined just the exact number of steps that need to happen from start to finish. So I need to make 5 dents here, and then 5 dents here, and then 5. So I make all the first initial dents, then I go back and make the secondary. So I broke it down into this thing, and then I did time trials where I would just do it as fast as I could, but while trying to maintain this level of precision.
Right.
And this particular design, I was able to do it in I think just under 5 minutes was my best time.
That's sick.
And it's not, I have to be careful about presenting that, because it is, I spend so much time when I create an official sculpture, although I guess I don't care if people think like I did it in 10 minutes, like I don't care. It's it's like, if you pay me, it's like that doesn't matter. That's not actually a factor. That I did spend 50 hours all told on this piece doesn't, if I spent 2 hours, then it doesn't matter to you,
right?
But it is something that I can do faster. But so as a way of practicing, as exercise, I would do time trials. But I might try the blindfolded thing.
Yeah,
that could be fun.
Yeah.
Or without looking.
Yeah. So never while watching TV, you just have a can just chilling in your hand.
I do it a lot. But yeah, I don't necessarily like watch TV. It's usually just kind of background noise. But I try to stay hydrated, and then the cans that I use to stay hydrated, I try to use those to practice.
Gotcha.
So I have a new design, and that's the other thing I meant to touch on earlier was new discoveries.
Definitely got to feel good. Yeah.
When I first started doing it, one of the main motivating factors was discovering a new shape or discovering a new arrangement. And it happened more frequently in the earlier stages. So new discoveries have become more rare over time. But they're always there. Even if the next new discovery takes years, like I know there's still another design, there's still another variation, there's still that, because by definition, if you follow the math, there's an infinite number of ways. So here's an interesting mathematical concept about infinity.
Okay.
So you can pose that there's an infinite number of ways that a can be dented. And there is. You can have, from this can only has 1 dent, this can has 999 dents, and then you can, each one of those, you just move the dent, each one of those dents. So there's an infinite number of ways and even if you take a can and crunch it every time, it's going to be different every time.
Yeah.
So that's a way of describing it. So that's an infinite number. It's going to happen. It's not going to be exactly the same. There might be one that looks just like another one, but there's a little bit different on a cellular level. If you have to go that deep, there's an infinite number of different ways that a can be dented. There's another within that infinity. There's also another infinite number of dented cans that are beautiful.
What do you mean by that?
They look beautiful, like this one.
Right.
So this sculpture right here is one example of an infinite number of ways that a can be dented. So there's two infinities, and that's the mathematical idea, is that there's what's called a big infinity and a little infinity.
Are you about to blow my mind right now?
Have you never heard this?
No.
Yeah.
No.
So and that's what I just said relies on this. So there's an infinite number of ways to dent a can, but there's also an infinite number within that. There's a smaller amount. So there's one can that's dented and it doesn't look beautiful, and there's one that does. But there's an infinite number of both. But you know that one is small. One infinity is smaller than the other. Yeah. There's a clearer mathematical description for it. It's not popping up.
I'm gonna Google it later though. For sure.
So you can describe two different infinite things, but you can prove, but theoretically one is bigger than the other. So
that's wild, dude.
Like there's an infinite number of values in between the number 1 and 2.
Right.
But numbers also go infinitely higher.
Right.
So.
Oh, yeah.
So the number of values in between 1 and 2, that's infinite.
That infinite,
but
smaller than that.
But it doesn't include the infinite set of numbers that include the number 3, because the infinite value between 1 and 2 does not include 3. So there's an infinity that also includes 3. So you know one of them is bigger than the other, because well, this infinite set doesn't include this number. And that's even kind of a strange thing to say.
I took a class in school, like I think it was just called math topics, and I had already done algebra and business calc and things like that, but I needed like one more credit for my math thing. And I was like, let's see what this is about. And it was topics like that where it's just like, let's mathematically prove some like wild shit, like like a lot of stuff about subsets and sets and subsets and whatnot. It's like this is insane. Yeah, there's a lot. No, you're good. There's a lot more going on than just the. I mean, some would say BS and say algebra or something like that in high school, where you're just like, what do you teach me this for? And then if you're kind of just a slight bit interested,
you can discover that.
Yeah, you discover something more interesting. Yeah.
All right. So to circle back, 1 million seconds is almost 12 days. A billion seconds is 31.7 years. So a million seconds is 2 weeks.
Yeah.
A billion seconds is 30 years.
And a billion is just 1,000 millions, right? Or
it's a million. Or no, wait.
Right?
Yeah.
I think it's just 1,000.
999,999,999 would be one less than a billion.
Right.
So yeah, you have a million. Yeah, then you have 3 digits of a million, and so then the next digit is a billion when you add. Yeah.
Right.
But that's the difference between a million and a billion.
Yeah.
When people are like, oh, he's a billionaire.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, you're a millionaire. Like, okay, be a billionaire.
Yeah.
Like, totally different thing.
Yeah.
But there's also a limitation, and like that's kind of there's a cognitive limitation there. For people who've never dealt with $1 billion, don't have an actual frame of reference. Like, there's very few people that have a frame of reference for what that is. but we have like in our brains and the way we think and the way that we congregate and communicate, like there's and I don't know the exact numbers, but there's a level of efficiency. So you can only know a certain number of people effectively.
Right.
And I don't know what the number is, but there's a certain number of people within an office where if you have more than that people, it starts to become counterproductive because you can't have you can't have effective relationships with more than, and that's why you have managers, assistant managers, like to manage all of this stuff. But there's limits on that kind of stuff, and for different reasons. But there's also limits on how we can think about like values and numbers and stuff like that. But it doesn't mean you can't say
diminishing returns type situation.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's fun stuff.
Yeah.
Where'd you get this?
IKEA, dude. Yeah, that's just an IKEA situation. I actually had these before I worked at the Bricks.
That's nice.
But I'm a big fan. I've had them for a few years now, actually. I like them, especially because I don't stay hydrated at all.
Yeah.
In fact, when I do a podcast, like I have to cognitively think earlier in the day and like, hey, drink some water now. So you're good. But I'm chapping up now. But also, I was drinking a little bit yesterday.
I mean, I've just been at home. I've been working at home. I haven't been talking that much.
Right.
So
yeah.
That's what I even had like a little disturbance there. Yeah. But yeah, it's good to have the water.
For sure. Are you? Shit. Are you? Do you kick it at home most of the time though? And home in the studio?
Yeah.
Before this whole thing.
COVID, yeah. So I have the studio in Ybor, and that's since then I've been spending less time there. But I had already been setting up some stuff at my house to do some work at home, just like some tools and stuff that I didn't want to have at the space in Ybor, because I have enough space there to do that. And so when COVID happened, I focused on that a little bit more, just so it'd be easier, so I wouldn't have to, because I actually I have the studio space in Ybor, but I also have a warehouse space, a studio and a warehouse space that a friend of mine practices out of. So I have access to a couple of different spaces.
Gotcha.
But yeah, being able to work from home is great though. But yeah, I've been just there a lot, like throughout all of this.
Right.
But
I do wonder as well with because this is my studio now, or, you know, our studio, right? But like me personally, to get to work sometimes in the morning, to get to work in here, sometimes I'm just like, does that studio space help you with that? Because I don't even know if it would help. I think I might be lazy sometimes.
No, working from home, yeah, it can definitely encourage laziness. And it did help. I had a studio space at home, but it was a 2-story house, and the bottom floor of the house was a house on stilts.
Okay.
So the bottom floor, it was closed in, but it was more of like a garage space.
Gotcha.
It was kind of built out, but I had the studio, but it was downstairs. So it was like upstairs and downstairs. But it can, when you start to blur the line, there can be a little, maybe like a mental block.
Yeah.
When you're at home and then you get ready and you leave and you go to a place that's dedicated solely to doing what you do.
Yeah.
There is kind of like you're literally putting yourself in a different place.
Yeah.
And it can be helpful. It's been like throughout my working history, it's been a blend. So it kind of be hard for me to identify which one is better. But because I love what I do, so it's like the briar patch for me. It's like that's where I'm the most comfortable. You know, it's like there's tools everywhere. It's like I don't have roommates or anything. It's just my dog, and he doesn't mind. But like, you know, there's like, you know, tables with, you know, different workstations set up, and everything's happening. You know, it's not like a neat organized. Well, I mean, it's organized, but it's not like a living space necessarily. It's not. I don't know. But that's just where I feel most comfortable, and it's like that's how I work most effectively. Where I can, right. I mean, I could just sit on the couch and relax, or I could, you know, get up and walk across the room and work on this project that's on this table, or go to this table and work on that project. And so it is, I guess. Do
you bounce back and forth between kind of like that?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I think it's really.
So you put it down.
It's really important to have multiple projects going on at once. Because being able to separate yourself, and it was something that was something I noticed more when I painted. So if you spend a long time working on something, you become very familiar with it.
Right.
And so switching to a different project or to a different painting, and like leaving that one and for a day or two, so you don't forget about it, but you just disconnect from it.
Yeah, you're not in it.
And when you go back to it, you can have a little bit of a fresh perspective on it,
right?
Which I think is helpful. And I mean, I guess you don't have to have multiple projects going on to do that. You could just have a project and have the time or the ability just to set it aside and go do anything else.
Right.
You know, I don't know what you do with your time.
Right.
I'm not telling you what you do with your time, but
I'm a Netflix type of cat.
But I do that. I'll have multiple projects going on, or, you know, different things I can work on to, because at the same, it can, working on one thing for too long can be, it can be frustrating. Anyway.
Yeah, I get the burnout for sure.
But my main point with working at home and how it affects productivity, I would say there's a bit of discipline involved in working from home.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know. I guess it depends. I think with art or with something creative, it's a little bit better. But like if you're a lawyer, like you don't want to have your office in your house necessarily. I don't know. I think having it.
Yeah.
I just consider it more of like a professional thing, like to have an office or something. But it's really one of those, like, whatever works best for you. I think that's what you should.
I think
do.
you gave me a little bit there with the. I'm gonna start bouncing back. I'm gonna try it out. Just bouncing back and forth.
I mean, and
having a few more things on the plate.
Yeah.
Because I get just in the process of going from just straight audio podcast to video now. The last 2 weeks, I'm like banging my head against this table, trying to figure out, you know, make sure everything works correctly. Blah 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 blah. Yeah. But as I think as I get it more in line, then I can start playing with other projects in between.
Yeah.
And I'll be okay.
I definitely recommend it, just because it gives you the ability to shift gears.
Yeah.
And
because I've been the last 2 weeks. I've been in the lock-in. It's just like this. This is what we're doing. I've been going crazy. I've been going crazy, dude. I've been losing a little bit here and there, but no, it's a great idea. Just gotta start putting stuff down. Because what I do is like put stuff down and just like watch Netflix instead.
Yeah.
It's not.
Hey,
it's not moving forward though.
Yeah.
I need to move forward.
You need to move forward, or you need to get to the end of Netflix.
Yeah.
And then you'll be able to get some work done.
That infinity right there. that's difficult.
I mean, I guess it will. It's. I guess. The thing is, all right. So, and you could be hard on yourself for watching Netflix when you could be working,
right?
But at the same time, don't think that you couldn't be inspired to an idea by something you saw.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You'd be like, oh yeah. Like what? Or what if I? That's an idea. You know, it's like because and like especially with creative work, but it's something that in all types of study. People tend to think like you have to be physically working on something to be working on it.
Yeah.
But like, so say like I can just go back to painting. Like I'm working on this painting, physically working on it. I have the brush, the paint, I'm working on it. But then I go to eat lunch or whatever. I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
And like there's thought, like even if you're not trying to think about like a project or something, your brain is always kicking it around. And it can be important to remove yourself from a project for your brain to get to the place to make a breakthrough. Because a lot of people like to think they're in control of their brains. I don't think that's the case.
No.
Well, so do you think that you're in control like of your thoughts?
I think no, not of your thoughts.
You're in control of how you move forward with and what you do with the thoughts and ideas that
I think
you have.
it kind of like like maybe a CEO situation in which, you know, all the biological stuff runs underneath, but you kind of set the direction.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's kind of how I think of it. But I don't know shit about brains.
I mean, I think it's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
But so maybe to say that we have no control is going a bit too far. But,
Yeah. I'd say so.
But we definitely have less control than we think we do.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think it's very interesting, and it ties into the like how we perceive art, and how we perceive beauty. Like these are all very interesting things that go into the psychology and neurology of the actual brain cells and the synapse, like how like the physical action of what's happening, and then like the psychological ideas about, you know, behavior and all these things. I mean, it's like the book about humans, you know, it's like the instruction, it's like the manual for humans, you know, because it's something in a way it's like we're all subject to it, but then again, we're all subject to it in our own way. So we all have our own mix of, well, in psychology, they call it nature and nurture.
Right.
So you have what you're born with, like you have your physical appearance and your physical makeup and your mental, like the actual size of your brain and all this stuff is like the physical thing that you're given. But then that's nurtured by your life and what you're taught and how and your environment and all these things.
Right.
So it's a mix of your physical self and your environment and how they work together to make the person that is you. But we're a lot more affected by our environment than we think we are, or that we realize. And we're so familiar, like you're saying, like when you're a baby and everything's new for the first time, something like it's hard to even imagine what that is. You like as a thought experiment, as like a meditation, you can think about it, but you can never really know what it's like to see something for the first time again. Like it's just impossible.
It would be dope though.
Yeah. Well,
it would be dope if you could.
I mean, there are like there's some like drugs and with anesthesia, like there's some like you can like disconnect from that,
right?
And then like so when people are like coming back from being put under for surgery, like they're loopy in a way, or brain damage, like people that, you know, you can lose your ability to speak, or have amnesia where you lose your memory. So there's a lot of like the way that it works is like this still very not, you know, it's not fully understood, of course, but I think it's a good example of what we do with the things that we accept as ordinary, the things that we accept culturally, and like language and all these things. We become so used to them, and we rely on them so heavily that we need to do that to operate. But there's like that's not like the core truth of the matter. The core truth of the matter is like our brain is putting together all this information, and like it can be like with so optical illusions point this out in a pretty cool way, like the blind spot, or the way that like there's a bunch of really cool optical illusions. If you Google it, there's a bunch of them.
Right.
But the reason that optical illusions work, or most of them, point out things about our perception, about how we perceive shape and form, because it connects to our physical world. Like, I'm looking at that microphone and I know I can reach out and touch it, and I'm comparing how close my hand is. Like, I know I'm about to touch it. And like,
Right.
I mean, I don't have to put much thought into it because it just happens. It's something I'm very familiar with. I'm familiar with hand-eye coordination and all this stuff. But it's just because I'm used to it. Like, when optical illusions can point out like the gaps that our brains fill in.
Yeah.
So when you have a true picture of the gaps that your brain is filling in, like with the information that it gathers, you realize how disconnected from reality you really are. So, well, first of all, your eyes are lenses, and the back of your eye, the cornea of your eye, is receiving visual information that's flipped upside down.
Yeah.
And so it travels through your optic nerve, and your brain calibrates it to be right side up. So that's right off the bat. Everything you're seeing is physically upside down, and your brain is turning it the other way around.
Right.
It's filling in so much information. So there's an actual, like, when your eyes are open, it looks like you feel like you can see, like, there's all of this peripheral vision and stuff, but so much of your peripheral vision is being just pieced together by your brain. The actual effective area of actual vision that you're taking in is very small. The information that your brain is piecing together is way more than you think it is. It's like your brain is basically tricking you.
Yeah.
All the time with what you see, with what you hear. Okay, so with what you see, there's an actual. It takes actual time for visual information to go from your eye to your brain and to be processed by your brain for whatever. If you see a ball flying towards your head, your eyes see it, your brain processes that information, and the reaction is to duck.
Yeah.
Not, or whatever, or move or duck. So, but there's an actual time. So there's an actual delay. A physical, actual, I don't know how long
like
it is.
Computation type of
There
shit.
is an actual delay. And so what you are thinking about what's happening is happening after the actual occurrence.
Yeah.
So in an actual measurable time, I don't know what that time is, but your brain makes up for that in a way. So if your brain, it's hard to imagine your brain flipping everything you see upside down to make it make sense.
Yeah.
Your brain is compensating for a delay and to make you think that you're in the current moment when you're actually not. You're neurologically behind what's happening, and your brain.
It boosts it forward. Is that what you're saying there?
Yeah. So it happens. So it happens when you visually when something's blinking.
Okay.
And you see it blinking. So say you can see it blinking in your peripheral, this blinking light. Depending on when you look at it, it's going to be on or off. So you're going to look, and there's sometimes it happens. I don't know what the term is, but you can look at it, and sometimes it'll look like it was on longer than normal, or off. Or when you look at the clock, the second hand. Okay. Sometimes when you look, it seems like the first one takes longer.
Right. See, you're gonna have me over here
your brain,
looking at my peripheral vision all the time and like paying attention for the next 2 weeks.
Your brain
that's all you.
Your brain fills in some fraction of a second of visual information, processes it, and like that's what you actually perceive. So there's an actual and physical disconnect between your perception and the reality of what's happening, but our brains are designed from and learn from day one to process that information, to make our reactions efficient, to make what we hear and see useful information. But when you really get into it, and it's almost disturbing, because when you realize how disconnected and how little control we have, how much our brains are tricking us.
Right.
It's kind of crazy. It is. Just to think about it, like, wow, my brain is tricking me right now. Like, you could, like, that can go wrong. Like, those are like when someone has a psychotic episode or a schizophrenic episode, like, these conditions are caused by malfunctions of the brain where it's not working right, where it's filling in, where it's hearing things that aren't being said, where it's seeing things that aren't actually happening. Like, so when it goes wrong, it's really apparent.
Yeah.
But when it goes right, you're just like, oh, yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah.
It's nutty.
Yeah, it is.
It's definitely nutty.
And I think it's super interesting stuff. But I don't know, I guess we ended up kind of going off on a tangent.
No, I'm gravy. No. That's what I'm about. You got me. I'm the whole, like, the next 2 weeks I'm going to be thinking about my peripheral vision.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And, like, is that really there? Is it there now or then? Like, that's, yeah.
Yeah. It's, yeah, you got it's interesting. It's eye-opening, and it's one of those things, like, it's one of those things that's nice to remind yourself of every once in a while.
Yeah.
Again, like, like, everything is beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, anything, a leaf falling from a tree is beautiful.
Yeah.
Like,
I haven't crunched one in a while.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Yeah. But yeah, it's good to have reminders of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because a result of, to say that you become desensitized to the world, it kind of, while it's necessary, like, you have to be desensitized to stuff to operate, to be a functional person.
Right.
Excuse me. But if you're too desensitized, then it's like, yeah, then you're not, like, then you can become, like, an uncaring, or, it can go too far.
Right.
So, like, it's crazy that there's this balance, and that's why I think reminders of these things are important, because shit's crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm wondering now, are you kind of like would you say you're, like, a generally positive person?
Yeah, I guess. I try to. I'm not always. I can struggle with, like, with being motivated or with, like, or feeling positive, but I would say that's generally where I try to go to, where I try to, like, gravitate towards being positive.
So you sit in the pocket pretty often.
Yeah.
Wish I had a little of that too. I waver. I go.
But
and they're big swings though with myself.
Yeah. I think it's something that's become more. It's become more prominent as I've gotten older, though. I think I might, like, when I was younger, I might have been a little bit more cynical, maybe a little bit more apathetic, but that still comes. I mean, that I can still have waves of like apathy or not feeling motivated or have just be down and stuff. Which, like, I think everyone, and to varying degrees, can have ups and downs mentally. But that's another good thing. That's why it's good, when you're down, it's good to have reminders. It can be good to have reminders of these things that are important, but it can also be good because there can be a bad side to positivity. It's like, you can be too positive about stuff and overlook stuff that really needs to be addressed, or you can just be positive about doing the wrong thing. Just because you're positive about it doesn't mean it's right. And so it can be, you need to, I think positivity is important, but critical thought is also important. I think, like bias, like having bias is a hard thing to get through. I think it's important to, like, realize what your own bias, or like, to be able to identify it, at least, I think is important to know I mean, to know who you are and what you like, to embrace and to accept bias that like, if you're a male or a female, like you're gonna have a bias one way or another naturally, and like that's natural. But you can, and it's like anything else, like accepting it and wielding it in a good way to your own benefit and to the benefit of others is obviously the best thing to do. To act in a self-limiting, hateful way because of your bias is obviously, I don't recommend that. Yeah,
not chill.
So, it's like, it goes. It's one of those things that goes both ways, I guess. But there's people that never realize that their own bias. They just kind of sink. They just always stay under it, and it directs their life. And it's, who am I really to criticize how someone lives their life or how effectively? I like to encourage people to be aware of beauty and art. Like that's really the only thing that I know how to share and relate to people through art. So that's something I try to do, to maybe just try to like improve, give people good thoughts or to expose them to beauty or to cool ideas. And I guess generally I try to do that to be positive. But at the same time, it's like, if you don't get it, you don't get it.
Right.
And, I don't know. You can't criticize people, but you can try to like, inform, tell people who you are, what you do. And I don't know. Just wish the best for them, I suppose.
Just kind of let the chips fall.
Let them fall where they may.
Let them do. Yeah. Let them live.
But it is crazy because in the times right now, I don't know, like just things are pretty tense right now, just for everyone. Like I think our country is just in such a bad place right now. And I think we all know why. I think. And that's the other thing is like ideas, or like the reason why we got here right now is like in the same way you can form like effective processes or form beautiful things by using simple components that compound each other and work together. It's like you can do the opposite and take really shitty stuff, really simple shitty ideas, and put them all together and they'll compound them. And it'll ruin it'll ruin like the greatest country on earth, or put us to our knees,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like you can be effective in a good and beautiful way, or you can be effective in a bad way also. But realizing, or when you realize that simple components can be compounded to create, a greater system of things, you see someone who's manipulative, and a manipulative narcissist, psychopath, and you can imagine what would happen, like the chain of events, or like you can imagine the outcome to them being able to assemble all of these simple, terrible ideas to where they compound themselves into an entire system, to an entire administration, and the effect that will have.
Yeah.
You can kind of think of how, and these are kind of ideas, maybe, or even sparks of ideas that people have. I mean, that's why people were crying when he got elected.
Yeah.
You knew what I was talking about, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. It's pretty apparent. It's a big.
It's not because
it's a big fat elephant.
It's because some people can look ahead with, I mean, not even without even solid information, but you can extrapolate. Extrapolation is a mathematical term, but it means you can take this rough set of information and kind of guess and judge what will happen and it hurts to like imagine. I mean, when you know the power of building a system like that in a good way, I mean, it going in a bad way is just as beautiful as something is something. What's the opposite of beautiful? Right.
Yeah.
I know. Ugly doesn't doesn't sum it up, I don't think, but yeah. So, but I think that's, I mean, as another to tie it in, I think that's what we're experiencing is just this. It's systematic.
Yeah,
it really is. Like this arriving at my artistic practice or this result is systematic. Everything's systematic, and when you know how systems work, you can imagine how other systems work.
Yeah,
So
I just wonder how to break this system. That's a That's a real difficult. Because motherfuckers, people that know way more.
Yeah, well,
about how the system works.
The crazy thing, is there's people that's their job. That's what they do. That's what they went to college for. That's what they got a doctorate in, like political science. There's people that study history.
Yeah,
like actual people study what's happened in the past, and they know about it, and they know what happened because people did these certain things. There's people that study monetary policy. There's people that know what will happen if you give tax cuts to the rich, or if you give funding to infrastructure or community development. Like these are all things that we know. Like it's not like, well, hey, we're going to try this and see if it works.
We've tested all these parameters.
There's all information
before.
that we know.
Yeah.
We know the outcomes. We know how much, like people spend their lives studying this, and it's a thing that our tax dollars pay for.
Yeah.
And so, but most people don't realize that, and they're like, oh, yeah, it'll trickle down. And we're like, no, these people are way smarter than you.
Yeah.
And they know what's going to happen, and that's why they're doing it. Because they're, and it's that way in everything. And that it's that way in structures of power and structures of control. But the thing is, like, you could go run for the lowest city council, or you go get on the school board, or go, you could actually join in as a normal person, and that's what makes it a democracy. Like it's not a closed system. There's still, right. I mean, and we see that with more progressive politicians, and that's probably their motivation to get involved, is like that they are unhappy with the system and they want to make change.
My bad.
But yeah, so there is that, like, it does kind of suck to watch the bad stuff happen. But there's other things, so about systems of power that operate in a certain way. Like I heard there's an interesting idea about, and they actually used the Nazis as an example of this, but the logistics of establishing an organization and an administration to carry out these, well, like with the Nazis, there were these atrocities to round up the concentration camps and all these things that they were doing. They had to have a chain of command. Building the chain of command to do that, it can only be carried out in a certain way, and it's susceptible to flaws of efficiency and, like, in communication. So you see it like in the Trump administration. There's no cohesive message.
Yeah.
There's so many mistakes being made. It's because no one is competent. Like, they're only there because they're subservient. They're not actually good at what they're doing.
Right.
So they can just, coast along and kind of bullshit like this. Oh yeah, Jared Kushner he's working on peace in the Mideast right now.
Right.
Like, he was tasked with peace in the Mideast, and all these different things, which are not actual realistic goals, but it's basically just like they can run cover for having an administration of lackeys so that they can to avoid responsibility. But it's a system like that has inherent flaws that will lead to its collapse, is the idea. So it's just a matter of time, and just hoping, like, that they don't do too much damage.
Yeah.
until that time is
that's
up.
where I'm fearful of, is like it could be all fucked before it falls apart.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Before the car falls apart, let's not hit anything.
Yeah.
Or hit any more stuff.
Any more stuff.
Yeah. We already got a bumper.
Yeah, but it's
flapping off, and you know.
Yeah, but this thing, I mean, like the news cycle, it is just like, it's like car crash after car crash.
Yeah,
you know?
It's sketchy. It's sketchy, especially like when it first happened. When he first was, in office, like I picked up the phone each day basically, and just like, what did he fuck up today, you know? And I think it's probably still applicable now.
Yeah.
I don't check for it as much.
Well, and it's actually it's a strategy. So,
you think it's intentional?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Because it's I forget, there's an actual term for it, but it's like when there's just one thing after another, like, oh, he's shithole countries, or oh no, it's this, and like one controversial thing after another. The last thing he did is being eclipsed by the next thing.
Right.
And so it's like you can't keep up, and it becomes like information overload to the point to where it's like, and then he can just say, it's like, oh, just the media is just all out to get me. That's why it's just nonstop stories trying to, it's like nonstop stuff, just, trying to bring me down. Right? Like, but it's a psychological effect. It's overload. And it's something that, I mean, it's theorized that, American culture, people work hard at their job and their family, and so and they have this limited free time, so they don't have enough time to be involved politically, or to care, or to be that informed, or active, or to be involved, and I think that's why all of this happening and the shutdown gave people a lot of time to think.
Plenty of time.
Yeah, and I think it's important, and it kind of points out some things. It's like, well, yeah, so maybe people shouldn't have to work as much.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like, maybe the economy doesn't have to be that what it was. Maybe we don't have to have rampant consumerism
as well. It's like, why do we have to be? So I studied economics in school, and I'm like, why does it have to be the biggest economy? Like, what purpose? Because all of economy is just trading goods.
Yeah, it's numbers. Like,
it's just trading goods. It's, trading my time and my resources with you. It's like, why do we have to have the most transactions? That's kind of silly.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
How about the transactions that help the most people, or the best for the whole,
the benefit
of the whole?
Like, we have the most.
It's kind of goofy.
Like, we have the most. Like, what types of transactions? Like, we have the most.
Oh yeah.
Or like we spent the least on healthcare.
Yeah. Why is that a thing?
Yeah. Or that should. Yeah. It's like. Yeah. Or. Yeah. Like our fruit and vegetable economy is great. Like,
yeah.
Our health food economy is great. Or like. Yeah, there should be
that would seem to be the pride of
it's the substance of it instead of just the value. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just answered my own question. Now I think about it. It's because that serves who it serves. To have the USA number one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, that's yeah. I mean, I obviously think history is an interesting topic, and current events is also, but there's a lot of stuff, and even like in economics and all of this stuff, when something counterintuitive happens.
Yeah.
Like when it's like, something like counterintuitive would be like, there's 30 rape accusations, money laundering, the Russians, all these failed businesses, there's all this stuff that Trump has done, and none of it is stuck. So it would be like counterintuitive if he if he like if he made like an awkward if he made an awkward scream like in celebration at a campaign rally, if he was out there and build the wall, and then at the very end he was like,
yeah. What was homeboy's name?
Howard Dean.
Oh, Dean. Okay.
Yeah. If that was the thing that brought him down, if that was the thing that people were like, no, this guy can't be president.
Yeah.
Did you hear what he just? Did you see what he just did?
Yeah.
It's like there would be like. There's something about counterintuitive stuff because of its nature and stuff. It's like it's unexpected.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't doubt if it was something from out of left field, something that counterintuitive will be the thing that turns the tide here. Where there's there's so many, like his handling of this pandemic.
Yeah.
You'd hope that would be enough. But it's like, what's he going to do? Does he have to like drop a baby or punch a kid? It's like, what would it happen? What would it take?
I think he kind of said it that one time. He's like, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and I wouldn't lose a follower.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I think it speaks to the followers.
Yeah, it does.
Even more than the...
it does.
Because he could have just been a crazy person that lost if everybody was like, oh, that guy's crazy.
Yeah. I suppose it was the climate too. And that's why I think it's interesting to kind of reflect back on it and to analyze it after the fact. And I think we got some of that picture before the primaries. So when Bernie Sanders was still in the running, and
you're saying this go around?
Yeah, when it was Sanders and Biden, Sanders was underperforming, and then they came to realize he was underperforming because he was running against Hillary the first time. So, it's terrible because it points out how many people just don't want to vote for a woman,
right?
Which could be because of sexism, or it could just I don't know. I guess there's really no other way to frame it, but
well, she kind of bites too.
Sure. Yeah. But there was the thing that there was had this just career, like she'd had a career of like shadowy conspiracy theories about it. Like she had been in the public eye for so long and it had already been treated this way, so it was easy. Like she already had this image.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's kind of like that. Still, to me, doesn't make the alternative seem good. But I think there was a lot of people that just wanted to change the system, and that's obviously and that's why they voted for Trump. And whether or not they realized that was a bad idea is I guess
the way it looks to me right now. I think I'd say a great portion of the people that voted for him the first time will vote for him again now.
You think?
After everything. Yes. I believe just the fanaticism behind. I don't understand their fanaticism.
I
don't even know if I'm using the right word for
it. I think there's definitely people who will vote for him no matter what.
Yeah.
And it's strange because I didn't really experience his reality TV thing, like so with The Apprentice,
right?
The TV show. I've never watched that show.
Gotcha.
I actually.
So you didn't know Trump too much before.
No, I mean I knew just knew who he was, but I didn't watch the show. I didn't know any of like that stuff. I didn't like follow his Twitter or anything. It was so it was kind of I wasn't like super informed, but there's fans of his from that. So but he built his image of himself through that show.
Yeah.
The image that he'd been building up through the 1980s, and like kind of just like finalized this character of this, you know, successful billionaire.
Yeah.
But it's just a character.
Yeah.
But there's people that believe that, and that's why they voted for him, because they thought he was like this great dude. But that's just not the case. I mean, it's a character. It's a fake thing. So I don't know, but I didn't witness any of that. So it's kind of like I'm a little bit
Just you got blindsided.
Yeah. I don't know. Can we talk about something else?
Absolutely. Let's. In fact,
we should probably.
We'll cut it here in a second, but I do want to ask as well. I always love to ask. What do you think your future looks like you personally?
Well, I actually have, and it's something that I think about, is like what the next steps with the art will be, and like what I'll do next. I have some stuff I can't really talk about.
Okay.
Because it's in the works. But among the things that I'll be doing is I'll be going bigger. So all the sculptures that I've created so far and the work that I've done that's resulted in sculptures is being treated as research for other projects. So these projects will involve doing large scale work where it'll be larger cylinders that are shaped. It'll also involve some consumer products and like collaboration driven consumer products.
Gotcha.
I can't be any more specific than that, but I know, like, and we've had kind of a slowdown here, but in 2019, I'd set some groundwork and started a relationship with the company that I'm going to be doing a joint venture with this company, and it's going to be an international campaign. So, but I'm excited. We have a couple of things, some stuff I've been working on, and it's stuff that I've been working on for 2 years. So it's been a long time working on it, but it's getting really close to it's getting really close to fruition. But there's been some roadblocks with the shutdown and the quarantine and COVID and all that. Because one of the factors in play is based in Asia. So there's a Hong Kong. There's a space in an entity in Hong Kong and China. So they've also been affected there, obviously. Yeah. So it's been they were affected and shut down there, and that caused a pause in the process. And then after they were getting back on their feet, we shut down here. And now it's kind of getting back to normal there. So it's just kind of a matter of whenever it gets back to normal here.
Gotcha.
But yeah, like I'm represented by a gallery that's based in Switzerland, in Zurich, and I normally do an exhibition with them every year, it's supposed to be in August, but so I won't be able to participate in that because I'm just not allowed to travel.
August is next month, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, I literally can't get on a plane and go there right now, so it's kind of a bummer. But,
gotcha. Are you sending some pieces?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
All right.
I hadn't planned on it. The gallery, they have a collection of mine, so they have, if they wanted, if they could set up, and they have a gallery where my pieces are on exhibit. But this event that they do is It's called the Swiss Art Expo, but it's a large event in a it's like a 3-day event that takes place in like this in the grand hall of the Zurich train station, which is like this really cool spot.
I'm gonna have to check out some pictures of that one.
Yeah. I did it last year, which was actually really bad. And this is the second one, but I've exhibited with them. They did Art Basel exhibit in Basel, Switzerland, and then I exhibited with them in Zurich. But I've exhibited with them in New York. They actually had to cancel. They had an exhibit in Barcelona that was arranged that they had to cancel because of COVID.
Yeah.
The one in August is going to happen, but I won't be able to go. Oh. And then I'm like as soon as travel is allowed again, I'll be going back to China as well.
Gotcha.
Which I was there last year. I got to visit Hong Kong and meet with a team there, and also went into the mainland to Guangzhou, which is like it's an amazing city. It's just like it's skyscrapers. It's like city from the future. And then this past winter, last December, I got to go to Shanghai, which was amazing as well. But there's a lot of cool stuff going on over there. And there's, like I said, like my work has actually been very highly received in China because they have their own independent, like they have their own YouTube, essentially. They have their own Instagram. They have their own social media platforms.
Gotcha. Are you active on those?
Not directly.
Okay. You get reshared basically. Or
yeah, I got reshared. So I did have like my video was like a top viral video. There,
wow.
There, and so
that's neat, dude.
And
like a whole different world, basically.
It really is.
That you like.
So
that's dope.
I mean, and there's some crossover and stuff, but they have their own. They have their own like genres of like pop music and their own stars and sports stars.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like its own world, and it's strange how there's no like they don't like just two worlds like don't know about each other, and it's the same. It's honestly it's the same in Europe. It's the same in Europe as well. Like for as connected as we are as a world, like with the internet now, it's kind of strange how little we know about other countries and like what they're doing, like who the popular band is, or who, you know, like the little things.
I think it might be a function of. This is what I think sometimes. I'm like, it kind of might be a function of just as we are as people, like individuals. You kind of worried about your own shit.
Yeah. So it's like, who cares?
It's like, even if we could speak better, you know, together.
Yeah,
like
even then, it's like we're just over here.
Yeah, we're over here doing our
like,
shit.
It's like Tampa and St. Pete.
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
Are we supposed to care what's going on?
Yeah,
in
30 minutes away, dude. Yeah.
Good point. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah,
I think it's about kind of real similar to that. Is what I think.
Yeah.
Which, you know, it's not bad necessarily.
But yeah,
when it becomes other, when the person. If St. Pete, you know, we don't want to war with St. Pete.
Yeah. It's like turf wars or whatever. Yeah.
I still think we'll whoop their ass, but you know.
Tampa is way harder than St. Pete.
You just start a gang war, a Tampa St. Pete gang war. That'd be sick.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you have anything to promote? Any?
Not really.
It's wild when I ask that question now.
I already did. That's that's. I mean, I promote.
Gotcha.
Promote art.
Is there any way to see that online or anything?
Yeah. So I'm most active on Instagram.
Hit the mic.
I'm most active on Instagram. Yeah, at Noah Deledda, and YouTube. Also, I've got a YouTube channel under my name Noah Deledda.
Maybe I haven't seen the YouTube yet. Links in bio, by the way, for everyone. The links down below. I got you.
Word. Good looking out. But yeah, Instagram and YouTube are my main outlets. But I do have some. I've got some plans that are going to be kicked into gear here as soon as
As soon as you can.
As soon as we get back to normal,
Yeah.
fingers crossed, I guess. But
we'll see. We will see. Beautiful.
Yeah, maybe we can catch up again after some of this. After I can talk about a couple of these projects because it's pretty,
for sure,
it's pretty cool
1,000%.
Yeah.
If you've been on this before, anybody that's been on this before, you're in the club. I guess I'm not that cool, but
What do you mean? It's your club.
you know what? I am the coolest in my club, but I don't want to get big headed like that other guy. That's the president of his club.
Oh, jeez.
All right,
Cool.
I think we got it.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you
for having me, man.
Good deal.
Good talks.
Sick.